Hola, minasan! Welcome back for another round of Warhammer research. We are now shifting gears with the orcs. We're going to learn about gods. That's right, Gork and Mork. I was introduced to these gods in the previous videos. You know, made mention of them, and thanks to my comments, my viewers in the comments, they put it very simply. If you meet Gork, he will hit you with his club. If you meet Mork, he will hit you with it. He will hit you, but it'll be from behind. So that's the difference between the two. I wonder if that's gonna be mentioned. On there. This is coming from Pancreas. No work. Gork and Mork, Big Divine Mushrooms video. Be sure to click on the and show their support. The links are in the description down below. So call to action, comment, like, subscribe, follow, hit the notification bell, and let's begin researching.
You know, writer's block is a pain. I start a script, ready to get going, stare at a blank Google Doc for 10 minutes, write 3 lines, and then repeat the process.
Yep.
Always feels a bit like I'm being petty too, you know? Like, oh no, I can't think of a funny joke. My life truly is filled with toil and suffering. But then I think to myself some advice that's always helped me out. When you're struggling to think of something creative for a faction you care about, you just gotta get stupider. Like, as far deep and rock bottom as you can get, and then break out the pickaxes. That kind of stupid. So with that in mind,
yeah, that's kind of true.
Orcs and goblins, or grunts, are partial to 40k over fantasy. They're stupid. They're belligerent. The only reason they might not punch you in the face is because they've already kicked you in the balls. Or they're too busy doing it to someone else. Might makes right, and all that's worth doing is fighting in one way or another, and they believe this is completely acceptable. Even the goblins on the lower end of the totem pole don't complain about the orcs because they think this is wrong. They complain because they're weaker than the orcs, which means they get the worst of things. And because belief is what it is in Warhammer, this ideology naturally shapes the spiritual world. For the orcs,
love the pirate hat.
2 gods that give them rewards and motivations to keep doing the only things worth doing in their eyes: fightin', winnin', and lootin'. Gork and Mork, or if you're wrong, Mork and Gork. The 2 fighting as gods in all the Warhammer universes. You might think that's Khorne being a war god and all, but he's got nothing on these 2 lads.
Which one is
Khorne
which?
Also likes blood to top it off. The green lads don't care about that, they just want to fight and win. So if you're brutally cunning or cunningly brutal, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure which of the adjectives applies to which god, I like this video in particular, because it helped me overcome a writer's block in the best way I can think of. To prepare for this video, I got drunk, turned off my brain cells for a bit, and embraced what it truly means to be green. Let's get started, shall we? And believe it or not, the video on Orc Gods has given me a lot of theory crafting to do, with some amount of intelligent reasoning behind it. You've been forewarned of that now. If that long-winded and barely informational opening paragraph wasn't enough for you, Gork and Mork are the twin gods of the Greenskins and all the Warhammer series.
Oh, that's them, huh?
Sigma, where most of the old gods have died, but we'll get to the specifics of that later. It won't be too long, though, because funnily enough, Age of Sigmar has more lore for them than the other 2 settings. Another point in its favor, I say. I'll start with them in 40k first, since the knowledge there is largely applicable to the other 2 settings, and I don't need to segue into a sequel setting there. As with all factions relating to the War in Heaven, the true extent of Gork and Mork during those times is unclear. So with that in mind, I'm going to give you a bunch of theories I have, since GW loves to be frustratingly vague on important parts of their setting. I know mysteries stop being interesting when the answer is given, but they also stop being interesting when absolutely nothing is given. The old ones created the orc.
He's absolutely right. You know, this was something that I was having a tough time with in writing while I'm writing Truck and Bouken, and that's the magic, the functional magic in my world. I had been debating whether I wanted to just reveal it or keep it mysterious, because it is an important facet in my world build, and I wasn't sure how I wanted to if I wanted to go for it or not. And I decided to go for it, but to try to do like a light touch type of thing where I can give some answers but still keep the mystery going. So in my type of situation, I decided to look to what happened with the dinosaurs. Most recently, we find out that the birds are dinosaurs. And the scientists, after they finally, came to the conclusion that the connection is legit, then they were left with a new question, and that is, how did the birds get small? And so I decided to take a cue from that with my mystery of functional magic and how that works in the world, in which an answer was discovered, but there's still more questions that they can't answer, and they're trying to figure that out, and thus keeping the mystery. So it's got a nice little. So the intent is to get a nice balance between revealing the mystery and still keeping the mystery going. It's like a light touch type of thing. And he's absolutely right. If Gork and Mork are mysterious, at some point you have to reveal a little bit of something about them, and unveil a little bit of the mystery behind them. And it is possible to do it as long as you could keep the mystery. You know what I mean? You don't have to answer everything, but you want to give something for the audience so that they could be able to appreciate, the characters that they're following. And in this case here, there are a lot of orc fans. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if I'm an orc fan yet. If I qualify for orc fan, because I still love the orcs, but I think it's because I don't have the orc figurines yet. I haven't bought them yet, so I guess I'm not officially an orc fan. But the orc fans do need to have a little bit more information on Mork and Gork. Not enough to to remove the reveal the man behind the curtain type of thing, but just enough that fans have something to talk with and to play with and to interact with and engage with. You gotta always keep the engagement going with your viewers, and that's what I wanted to find about more Gork and Mork, because how did the orcs come to be? And if they got religion, then who are these gods, and what makes them worthy of being worshipped by a bunch of party animals, by some badass party dudes? Because that's what the orcs are. They're badass party dudes. Are they Gork and Mork surfers? Are they do they chill with the hookah or a little of the the marijuana? Bring out the ganja. Do they drink 40s or pull out the beer, or do they go straight for the rum and rum out? You know what I mean? Like, what is it that what is it that makes the orcs motivated? So yeah, the War of Heaven, of course, War of Heaven, where everything started for the orcs.
Orcs to fight the Necrons. That much is clear.
Yes.
What is also known from the more recent Eldar codices is that the Eldar gods were weapons worshipped as gods. I'm personally partial to the belief that they were always the Eldar gods and were just given an upgrade by the old ones, but even if you disagree and think the Eldar pantheon was created solely as weapons, that still means they very much had a hand in assisting the Eldar, and by extension their gods. Whether Isha was always a god or created wholesale, or hell is even an old one herself, she was still influenced by them to some degree. With that
Is that
in
an
mind,
anime rendition of her?
Come about in any numbers of ways. Perhaps the old ones created them as twin gods that they are now. Perhaps they were once Gork and Mork, the singular god with two heads. Or perhaps they came about from the collective orc subconscious. And I don't say Krork subconscious for a key reason. Gork and Mork are just like the orcs. They're belligerent and love fighting. This is noteworthy because while the Krork probably love fighting as much as their descendants, there's a consensus that the Krork were if nothing else slightly more sophisticated than the orcs. The orcs had diplomats during the War of the Beast, and they weren't even proper Krork yet. Real Krork would have been probably much more well-spoken, if equally happy to punch you in the jaw. It's important to this theory of their origin because it's another contrast to the Eldar.
What in the world?
Didn't change much over the course of 65 million years. Saren was always the king of the gods, Val was always a blacksmith, Isha was always a goddess of life. No changes in the Eldar subconscious, such as when they started becoming real degenerates, really affected the Eldar gods. They always stayed who they were static. And if one weapon race had gods that were largely static for so long, it would make sense that the Krork gods would have been like the Krork as well. Perhaps it's because the Eldar didn't really devolve in the same manner as the Krork, but the point I'm getting is that unlike the Eldar gods, I think it's a fair thing to argue that Gork and Mork only came about when the Krork had become orc. Could be wrong, but like I said, I fully admit that a large portion of what you've been hearing has just been theory crafting. I'm talking about the war in heaven. There's only so much I can do in facts. It's also because Gork and Mork aren't exactly brimming with character, even when compared to other 40k gods. Going forward into the time period where they are confirmed Gork and Mork rather than some hypothetical Krork god, there's a few solid things we know about them, and they don't lend themselves much to character development. Gork is the god of being brutal, yet still cunning. Sure, if he's got to do something sneaky, he probably will, but he's probably also just going to punch you in the face. Mork, meanwhile, is the god of being cunning, yet still brutal. If he's got to go face to face, he's more than happy, but he's also the one who's going to be opening with a crotch shot. As for why they have two gods, well, say it with me, everyone. If you only have one god, who's he supposed to fight? What makes Gork and Mork
that makes sense.
The rest of the gods in 40k is that they're rather passive, and do please hear me out, orc fans. I have an explanation for the orc heresy I've just uttered. Slaanesh soloed most of the Eldar pantheon, Khorne finally got off his chair lately, and the Emperor empowers living saints regularly. Tzeentch is so goddamn schemy that I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he's behind at least some of his schemes personally, and Nurgle captured Isha. But Gork and Mork? Intentionally, they rarely interfere with other gods' plans. Much like the orcs themselves, they generally don't invade other gods' domains so much as they happen inside of them. That's a good way to put it, actually. The other gods don't end up fighting Gork and Mork because the twins wanted to fight them, it just kinda happens. Unless you're a Farseer and can see the future, this is much the same as with their orc followers.
Oh my god, so they're unpredictable, huh? Like, they just give no Fs. Wow. They give no Fs. They're just there. Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. They're just there. That's it. That the gods know they're there, and they ain't doing nothing unless they can do a stomping. Oh wow, I'm liking them already. They just chill. They're just chill gods, and that scares the other gods. I'm surprised. Does that really scare the other gods?
Orc invasions often as not happen because the war boss decided this looks fun, and then suddenly a fortress world is swarming with the bastards. Likewise, Tzeentch doesn't end up with Gork and Mork outside his house because they wanted to be there. They were probably just in a Looney Tunes dust cloud fighting each other and then suddenly realized they had a spectator they could fight instead. That's not to say they never have any plans. Ghazghkull is getting as far as he is, at least in part, because Gork and Mork want him to get the big wah going. The two brothers rarely get along, but when they do, the galaxy quakes in fear. It's just that we rarely, if ever, get lore on the machinations of the greenskinned gods or how they're reacting to outside threats. I'm sure this is partly because GW will have their entire lore department commit honorable suicide before giving a proper in-depth Xenolore expansion, but for once I think it might also be just because GW is only able to do so much with it. The orcs aren't exactly an army with deep motivations, even by 40k standards. Love fightin', that's kinda it. Same goes for their gods. It'd be great if they showed up more often, don't get me wrong. I absolutely want more Gork and Mork. But there's only so many ways you can have Gork and Mork make an appearance, whereas other gods are a lot more versatile with what you can do with them. I imagine it's also partly why there's been so much focus on Nurgle in Warhammer video games of late. He can be a great big bad guy, or he can be more subtle with plagues and taking advantage of people's despair. Compare that to Khorne, who also just wants violence. Narratively, you're kind of limited with what you can have Khornate forces be doing, same with the orcs. As for how they fare in fights against other gods, it can go either way, really. Lore has stated that when Gork and Mork get hit by another god in the warp, they just laugh it off, which would imply they can pretty handily stomp whoever gets in their way. Now, lore has also stated that the Chaos Gods are the unrivaled masters of the warp, but to once again throw theory crafting at you, there's a couple of explanations for that. For one, you can just say that in either way, the lore is wrong. That either Gork and Mork really are the strongest, or they aren't, and they're actually below the Chaos Gods. But for starters, that's potentially more Chaos Wank, and therefore stupid and wrong.
Yeah,
others,
that sounds dumb.
Going one god is just better is an answer that pleases that army's fans, but no one else's. So allow me to suggest a compromise. Gork and Mork are the strongest powers in the warp. However, they have basically no mastery over it. Orc powers are different from other Psyker powers, coming from the field all orcs generate around themselves. Perhaps it still comes from the warp in some way, and it naturally can still make a weird boy's head explode, but it's not really the same thing as when a human Psyker rolls for perils. No possession, no whispering voices in his ear, besides maybe those of Mork telling him to cast eyeball laser again because it's funny. What I suggest is the compromise between these two blurbs of lore is that when Gork and Mork roll up on one of the Chaos Gods' turf, they absolutely bowl over them. Khorne is enjoying one of his rare...
Yeah, see, that's what I was thinking. I think Mork and Gork are so dang powerful that all the Chaos Gods are just, like, weaklings to them. And the best way I could put it is this. Mork and Gork may be the most powerful gods among all of them. Like really, really powerful. And everybody and all these Chaos Gods are so weak by comparison, they're not worth beating up. Unless, of course, the gods get stupid and decides to challenge them, then Gork and Mork will put them in their place and curb stomp them. I think I would say that's my theory why they're the way they are, and why they're not getting more lore into it. I think that's why they're trying to not do so much lore into Mork and Gork, because while the gods, are doing cunning things, Mork and Gork are like, yeah, we're here. What you gonna do about it? And the Chaos Gods do nothing. Because think about it, the Chaos Gods, all the gods could really do serious damage to the orcs. They could do serious damage to the orcs, and they look like they could, push Mork and Gork around, but they don't do it. Why? That's the big question. Why don't they push Mork and Gork around? I think that it's because Mork and Gork are so dang powerful and could go into full berserk rampage mode, and their love of fighting like the orcs, will have a serious backlash. Mork and Gork will completely annihilate them. And not only that, but since the Wog and the orcs have access to a universally shared psychic power that makes them more and more powerful, and they grow more and more and more, in size as they absorb more of the energy. Mork and Gork may have all that energy. Like they got the collective energy of the Wog, and they could go full Wog themselves on the gods, and the gods don't want that. They see how the orcs fight, they see how the orcs act, and they see that they probably see it as a reflection of Mork and Gork, and they don't want to deal with that because Mork and Gork won't hesitate to just walk all over them. I think that I would say that's my theory, that they're so freaking powerful because of the psychic energy they got going on, and with the Wog, their connection to the Wog and everything, that the gods don't want to even dare. It's like the Incredible Hulk. They're a pair of Incredible Hulks. Who messes with the Hulk? You don't want to antagonize the Hulk. You know what I'm saying? You don't mess with the Incredible Hulk, and I think that's what Mork and Gork are. They're the Incredible Hulk gods, and all these gods here, they don't want to deal with that. They don't want to piss them off and have them Hulk out, because then all that godlike energy will get put into the Wog, and those orcs will run rampant across the galaxy. Like they will run rampant across the galaxy, far worse than, let's say, the Tyranids and their collective conscious, or the Imperium with their fundamentalist zealotry, that they don't want the orcs to really take over the world, the whole entire universe, because they probably could do that in such a horrifying way.
Spare days off watching Blood Bowl, and then the Orc brothers bowl into his house, smashing up all the skull furniture and beating him into a paste on accident. When he tries to fight back, they just start doing it on purpose. But it's in a similar vein to Kaldor Drago and how the warp just resets back to normal after he leaves a given area of it. Once the greenskin gods move on, presumably to beat up someone else, the chaos gods dust themselves off and resume business as normal. It's almost like a natural disaster, but in hell.
Yeah, see, like I said, it's like the Hulk.
Conflicting lore, and this is not a definitive case of what is happening. I'm also sure that Out of Universe is another case of GW going, these are the biggest bad guys around, because selling Warhammer armies is built around them depicting them as the best thing ever before the next guy comes along to get the same treatment. Since the plot development of 40k only occasionally explicitly mentions what the gods are doing, the rest of 40k is...
In fact, sorry I have to pause this. Again. Let's put this in perspective. The taller the orc, the smarter they get. These two are gods. How smart are they? How smart are these two really? Are they that damn? Are they smart enough, hyper intelligent enough that the gods just legitimately mean nothing to them? You know what I'm saying? Like they could probably outsmart and curb stomp them. You know what I mean? And and just walk away. Like I said, the Incredible Hulk, Bruce Banner, and the Incredible Hulk is a scientist, and the Hulk had at times, been able to get, Bruce Banner was able to focus and take control of the Hulk, and ended up being intellectually, speaking. He would speak intellectually, put on the glasses, whatever. Bruce Banner would be in control of the Hulk and do all the scientific stuff in Hulk form. In Hulk form. And I'm wondering if that's the case with Gork and Mork, because, the taller you get as an orc, the smarter and intelligent you become. And since these two are gods and they're freaking, God knows how tall they are, they probably have enough intelligence to see the whole outlook of the universe, and they're like, yeah, we don't need to bother with these guys. We could curb stomp them. They're useless. We don't need to waste our time. If they screw with us, we'll put them in their place and move on.
Gork and Mork are happy to empower any random orc that asks, but they're equally happy not doing that. Gork usually helps the average boy along and is thus more worshipped by them, and Mork is worshipped more by the orcs that have a gimmick. Weird boys, mech boys, all the orcs that aren't just your average lad. If you're thinking that gives Mork a bit of an advantage because he's got more of the capable orcs, remember that Gork is the one who has 99% of the orc race in favor of him. Not that Greeks worship in the traditional sense or have religious schisms. If one orc likes Gork more, he punches the one who likes Mork more. Mech boys build stomp as his idols to Gork and Mork, and the average boy doesn't really care which of the two gods he's technically fighting in the shadows of. That's the end of it, and all greenskins love both gods regardless. With Ghazghkull rising, they became a bit more proactive and started guiding him on how to get all the fellas together for one big religiously motivated bar brawl, but aside from that, they don't really do too much. The Great Rift is known as Gork's Grin to the orcs, and to them it's a great place to randomly be thrown around somewhere to fight new stuff. That is just about the extent of the Great Rift affecting Gork, Mork, and the greenskins at large, and that's all I'm going to cover for 40k as well, so let's move on to fantasy. In Warhammer Fantasy, they're pretty much the same. One likes fighting directly, the other likes fighting but sometimes indirectly, and the two gods are largely unchanged. The difference largely comes in who they're worshipped by. If it's 99% of orcs favoring Gork in 40k, it's 99.999 favoring Gork in fantasy. This is made up for by the fact that the goblins primarily worship Mork, and there's a whole lot more importance placed on goblins than grots. So what happens as a result of this change? Again, not much. I guess they're a little bit more proactive in fantasy, since everyone from Grimgor to Grom has heard their voices in their head. Wurzag especially hears their voices, and he's more than happy to dance his way to wherever they tell him to go. The magic of the orcs but with a C instead of a K is once again different to normal Warhammer Fantasy magic, directly coming from the orc gods themselves. In a way, that means that every orc wizard is technically a paladin. That's awesome.
Really? Did I just hear that right?
Every orc wizard is technically a paladin.
Wow.
The biggest differences in fantasy comes in their origins and their version of having a single greenskin be their prophet. The origins are that they're just kinda there. It's a complete fantasy setting, so a violent belligerent god doesn't need to have its origins theorized about like with the old ones over in 40k. The orcs have always been there, the gods have always been there too, that's it, stop asking questions. Sometimes human scholars have theorized that Gork and Mork might actually just be Khorne in disguise, and others have said that in either case the end result is still hordes of greenskins, so it's probably not worth worrying about asking questions. They do also have idols made in their image constructed out of literal shit, and sometimes those idols come to life. But their prophet? Yeah, that's something different than in 40k, because with the end times, we've come to realize that two gods just having one prophet doesn't make a lot of sense. And sure enough, in Warhammer Fantasy, there is no singular prophet of Gork and Mork like with Ghazi. Instead, Wurzag delivered news to two separate greenskins that they would be the prophet of one god each. Grimgor Ironhide was the prophet of Gork, and Skarsnik was the prophet of Mork. And these two
I cannot spell those names out.
Would rain destruction and bring about the Wa to end all Was that would shake down the foundations of the world itself. Or they would have if this wasn't the end times. Yeah, I know. But hey, cheer up a bit. Out of all the characters in the end times, Grimgor was the only one to have a true shot at killing Archaon. He nearly did, and Archaon lost his future-seeing helmet and had to shatter his sword and unleash the demon inside of it to kill Grimgor. As for Skarsnik, he was leading the remaining orcs off-screen. This is both fitting, as his nature of being Mork's prophet means he's a bit more tactically inclined, and because the writers forgot about him during the end times, so he doesn't get to do anything more important than that, unfortunately. And for more reasons to cheer up, it's because the world ending wasn't enough to get these two gods killed off. Apparently off-screen between the two settings, two things happened. They fused into a singular god, Gorka Morka, and were trapped in a god beast consisting entirely of sentient amber. Sigmar came along and figured whatever, he has to kill that thing eventually, so he might as well free the two of them. When he does, Gorka Morka says thanks and then decks Sigmar right in the jaw. They fight for a week straight and eventually look around and start naturally laughing, both happy to have found another deity that loves fighting as much as the other does. Sigmar tasked Gorka Morka and his children with fighting the various things in the mortal realms that would threaten civilization, which is just about most of reality at this point. And thus was the god of the orcs of all people the defender of civilization. Although defender has some connotations to it that don't really fit. He didn't really defend, for example. Sigmar told him that X was a problem, and then Gorka Morka would make X no longer a problem. In fact, once Gorka Morka started being more of a defender because he had killed most of the things threatening the burgeoning mortal realms, issues started cropping up. He realized that eventually he wouldn't really be able to fight things properly as all threats to civilization were blown away, and the other gods probably wouldn't want him smashing his toys. He realized his technical subordinate Behemoth was having a lot more fun on account of having more freedom to smash things than Gorka Morka did. And eventually he just came to the realization that to him this was all a load of horseshit. Tzeentch also whispered into his ear that Sigmar wasn't giving him the treatment he deserved, but do you really think Tzeentch needed to do a lot to get Gorka Morka going?
No, not really.
He just whispered the word fight into his ear a couple of times, and that was all he needed to do to set him off.
Very
Gorka
simple.
Morka, an age of Sigmar, was the first deity to piss off from Sigmar's pantheon alongside his followers. He did so in the orkiest way possible. Declare war on all of reality, then march across it. When they got to the end, the plan was to turn around and do it all over. It fell into infighting before
It's
it was
like
fully
Godzilla.
finished, and Gork and Mork split once more into Gork and Mork, but the damage was already done. The Orcs were no longer allied to Sigmar, and Grand Alliance destruction could finally be its own thing. They've largely made the Realm of Beasts their home, because nothing says home like a reality where everything around is alive and wants you dead. It's a good thing there aren't any Orcs on Coqui-san, because they'd probably instantly level up into Krork. Then chaos invades, all of reality is broken, and things get worse for everyone. Gork and Mork is pretty much the only one not upset at this. Chaos loves a fight, gives him a great fight, and this time no one will complain about things like collateral damage. He was briefly unsplit and was last seen at the Battle of Burning Skies, the final battle before Sigmar officially gave up and went home to create the Stormcast, and by what few accounts exist, gave a pretty good showing of things. This was the last time anyone saw him. Of news beyond that, when Sigmar sent some Stormcast Channels to try and meet with them to open up diplomatic talks, Godrak told them that Gork and Mork had no interest in talking to anyone. Aside from all that, business as usual. Gork and Mork might be Gork and Mork at any given point, and the various destruction factions worship or at least revere him in a variety of different guises. The Ogres worship him as the Great Maw 2.0, for example, and the various destruction factions all have myths about the mortal realms and how they came to be from the various actions Gork and Mork took. And that's about it for the Greenskin Gods lore. But how about them on tabletop? Well, if that truly existed, I'd love to tell you, but unfortunately you can't properly play him on tabletop. That would be a bit broken, although in fairness, Nagash is the head of Grand Alliance Death and the God of Death, and he's got a mini, so who knows what lays in the future. But they do still have a presence, believe it or not. The Foot of Gork. Enemy unit takes d6 mortal wounds.
Ha!
4 or higher,
Oh, that's
it keeps
hilarious.
going until you eventually roll a 3 or under, or the enemy unit dies. And it's probably my favorite spell because it's divine intervention taken to its funniest extreme. Sure, you could empower a hero to fight beyond their limits.
Let me
but
hear that
can take
again.
under or the enemy wounds. If you roll a 4 or higher, it keeps going until you
Wow.
or the enemy unit dies. And it's probably my favorite spell because it's divine intervention taken to its funniest extreme. Sure, you could empower a hero to fight beyond their limits or arrange events from behind the scenes in such a way that they play out in your favor, or you could stomp the shit out of whatever is bothering your followers. Now that's proper.
That's
writing.
curb stomping.
And that's Gork and Mork. Much like the Greenskins themselves, you can beat Gork and Mork today, but you can never get rid of them. They'll always come back laughing and ready for round 2. Thank you, of course, to my wonderful...
Oh, wow. The Orcs can't get any more funnier. Oh my gosh. Gork and Mork are freaking pair of incredible hulks. I am convinced from what I have from what I've researched so far. You know, orcs when they do their walk, they get bigger. Then they say that when they get the taller that they get, the bigger they get, the more smarter they get. And so Gork and Mork being giant gods, their intelligence has to be so high that they probably figured out the whole entire universe, and they don't give a rat's ass. They're in total chill mode because they know they could curb stomp everybody. They probably got Batman deduction and everything, and they're looking at all the other gods, and they're like, yeah, we know how to beat every single one of you. We don't need to waste time. And that's why the guys don't mess with them. None of the other guys mess with them. Because if they mess with them, Gork and Mork come right in. That's it. Walk away. And the other guys are like, damn. Let's move on. They have that connection to the warp, which of course connects with the orcs. And the Wog, oh man, and the psychic abilities that they get, the collective psychic pool that they have. Oh man, I gotta say, Gork and Mork. I think in this instance, maybe keeping it as mysterious as possible. You know, like you know, you could sprinkle a little piecemeal here about the gods, but I think there's no need for that. Because if it is true and you link the culture of the orcs, how the orcs, you know, grow big and become intelligent and everything, if that is applied to Gork and Mork, then they are so highly intelligent despite the brutality of the orcs, they don't have to do a thing. And I think that's more than enough for them. I don't think there's any way you can be able to push forward and grow them out in terms of their lore. Because they can basically use their hyper intelligence and do this. Use their hyper intelligence and do this. That's it. Just You know what I'm saying? Curb stomp, like until you roll four or lower. I love I love that they came up with that in the game, in the tabletop game. But yeah, that's all they got to do. That's all they got to do. They don't have to do a dang thing. They are basically above all. And how long they've been gods for? It seems like they've been gods for even much longer. They could be older than the elder gods in theory. In theory, you can let me know if that theory is kaput or has been debunked. I don't have a problem with that. But if they are that old, you know, older than the gods themselves, and that whole warp in the wall, because remember, these guys go all the way back to the War of Heaven, the orcs. They're basically one of the old races, you know. They're one of the the elder races by that standard. So having to experience the changing of the whole worlds with the Imperium, the Tyranids, and so on, and their experiences with the Eldar and the other older races that the Quarks warred with. It makes perfect sense that their gods would have to be equally, if not more, older than all the other gods, and because of the way that the orcs work in terms of their world build and world build, being that the Mork and Gork are gods, they're that big, yeah. They're basically eldritch abominations. You know, everybody and the gods are so beneath them, they don't need to waste their time. They just satisfy the orcs' need for warring and wog, and that's it. You know, they don't need to do a damn thing. I think that should stay. I don't think they should progress or any mystery be revealed. I think from a writing standpoint, that would be a very bad idea then to try and reveal it. I think they're going in the right direction, because if you reveal Mork and Gork with the way that they're being presented, it will ruin everything. It'll ruin the Mork, Gork, and the orcs. And the history of the Quarks. It'll ruin the Wog, their association with the Warp. It'll ruin everything if they reveal Mork and Gork. I think that the fact that Mork and Gork just has a give no F's attitude and could curb stomp anybody and give the orcs ability to do that. Yeah, there should be no revelation, no revealing or anything, because it will ruin what's making them very special, you know. And the theory is fine. And I'm of the theory that Mork and Gork, being that their gods are probably extremely big and have hyper intelligence, the likes of which nobody could comprehend, and they probably see so much of the big picture. They're 4D chessing. They could 4D chess the gods easily, and then beat them up. You know, cunning yet brutal, brutal yet cunning. Keep that in mind. They do have cunning, both of them, despite the yin and yang, the yin and yangness of it. They're like yin and yang. They're yin and yang. Yeah, they got a yin and yang motif going on there. You know, brutal yet cunning, cunning yet brutal. There's hyper intelligence behind it. You know, very brutal intelligence. So yeah, I think that going by the world rules on how orcs grow their intelligence, Mork and Gork are hyper intelligent. I'm almost convinced. I'm almost convinced. I would like to hold on to that theory. Please let me hold on to that theory. Please let me hold on to that theory. Don't give it away. Don't give it away. That's special. This is very special for a group of party dudes, man. For a group of badass party dudes. Don't give this away. You will ruin everything that exists for them. Let me believe. Let me believe. This was pretty good done video. Very well articulated. I love that that is associated with the writing. Because believe me, as a writer, I'm very glad to have gotten those little nuggets and tidbits as a writer, and what it looks like, to be able to write Warhammer. It puts a very, very good insight into it, and really gives me some more insight in what I want to do with the gods in my world. Yeah, my world build, everyone's world builds. You gotta have your gods, you gotta have your maps, your factions, and so on. These lore videos have been a great enrichment source of information in the world of writing. So, oh man, good job. So, head on over to Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com and grab yourself a copy of The Impossible Man, a strange fantasy novel written by me. You'll find links to the book down in the description below, along with links to other merch such as pins, stickers, t-shirts, music. Enjoy the products. Thank you for your patronage. And if you happen to purchase a book and did a lore video on The Impossible Man, thank you very much. I look forward to seeing your take and analysis. And if all of you are interested, you can join me on my live multi-stream on Twitch and Kick every Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I research lore videos, do Japanese culture studies, and play video games, among other things. So I look forward to hanging out with you then. So until the next Warhammer research, thank you all for joining me, and I wish you all a good night, buenas noches, and oisumi nasai.